You're watching Inside Utah Politics.
Time now to debate some of the big stories of the week with the Inside Utah Politics panel. This week we have State Senators Luz Escamilla and Todd Weiler. Great to have both of you on the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Glenn.
Let's start off with coronavirus mandates. During the week we saw the governor stick with and extend the statewide mask mandate, but then loosening mandates on social gatherings. Senator Escamilla, Salt Lake City mayor, came out against that. What say you?
I support the mayor on this one. I think we should have kept those guidelines. We've seen, which is great news, some decrease in the numbers. Those mask mandates are helpful. Having people be reminded that they're not supposed to be gathering, more than 10 people is the best way of doing it. It's safe. Right now we need it in Utah. We still have really high numbers. Our positive rate is really high. I hope we can go back and continue those pieces in place. Those guidelines are helpful.
Senator Weiler, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's pretty wise not to criminalize people getting together for Thanksgiving. I mean, that would have been a joke a year ago. So I think the governor has given a lot of cautions. He keeps on saying, hold your Thanksgiving outside if possible. I don't know who's going to do that in Salt Lake, maybe in St. George, but I do think it's important that we're not arresting grandma on Thanksgiving.
So that is the big debate here, Senator Escamilla, is personal liberty versus public health. How do you bring those two together with your position on this?
Yeah, I mean, this is a public health crisis. Our numbers are extremely high compared to even our neighboring states. I mean, we're, I think, number 4 in the country. So until we don't manage to flatten our curve, we need to take action. And I'm not seeing that criminalization taking place. I think by having it, people being reminded that that's the law, I think people tend to follow the law. So I mean, there's a reason why we do those type of pieces when there's a public health crisis, and I don't see grandmothers being criminalized. I just think we need to be conscious and continue doing what is right. But by changing guidelines, it's just sending the wrong message. We need to be continue with the message that we're in the middle of a crisis and Utah has really high positive rates.
Senator Weiler, on Wednesday we did see cases go down quite a bit, but deaths really shot up, 26 on Wednesday, and medical professionals are warning if you get together on Thanksgiving, that number is going to continue to go up. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think we're entering the 10th month of this public health crisis. I think we all know a lot more now than we did, last February or March. And I expect that Utahns will be responsible. I think that they'll wear masks where appropriate, that they'll social distance. I hope people will leave doors and windows open to increase circulation, pull out a fan, and do what they can. But there's a lot of people, including elderly people, that have said, look, this is my life, and I'd rather live my life for what time I have rather than stay coped up in the basement. And I think that there is an element of personal responsibility. And the 26 deaths are tragic, Glenn, but fortunately our death rate in Utah continues to be very, very low, and I hope that will continue.
Where does this go from here? We're hearing now that a vaccine round 1 could be just weeks away. Once we start to see that vaccine distributed and available to people, Senator Escamilla, what's the future? Where do we go from here? I
think we need to keep thinking that we're talking about months before we get a hold of this situation. Having the vaccine, it will be available for the most vulnerable populations, our first responders, our those essential workers. It's going to take a while to get it to the entire state. So we need to continue being very vigilant on those guidelines. I know the death rate for Utah is low, that's true, but our positive rate is so high. I mean, you're risking a lot. It's a risk, and some of us have lost loved ones through COVID. We know that it's just not a joke. I mean, this is for reals. And 10 people, gathering of 10 people, I know it's small for many families in Utah. We have large families, but in a small space as a home. I mean, not everyone has very, very large homes. If you have that, of course, you can probably do more social distancing. It's not, it's just one Thanksgiving. We want them to be together for many more Thanksgivings and many more holidays, so that will be my recommendation.
Senator Weiler, where do you see this going? Vaccine, like I said, first round of distribution, maybe weeks away, but as Senator Escamilla points out, by the time the general population gets it, still months away. Where does this go from here?
Well, I think as soon as the vaccine becomes available, the fight's going to be about who should get it and why, and you're going to see a lot of criticism there. Also, you're going to see people refusing to get it, and I think where we're headed 6 months from now is if you don't have a UPC symbol on your phone showing that you've had the vaccine twice, Delta Airlines may not let you on their flights, and Home Depot may not let you in their stores. I think that's where we're headed. I think 2021 is still going to be very divisive. And I'm still getting emails. People are afraid the government's going to mandate the vaccine. I think everyone should take the vaccine, but I think it has to be voluntary.
Okay, we could continue to go on this conversation for a long time, but let's move on to something else. The presidential transition started taking place during the week. The General Services Administration signing off on allowing those resources to go to President-elect Biden. Senator Escamilla, let's start with you on this one as well. Why the delay?
Well, you know, we need to recognize that the GSA administrator, I think it's Ms. Murphy, it's an appointment of President Trump, and he clearly has been very loud about his opposition to accepting the results. So the 16-day delay, you know, clearly I think is in response to the fact that she works for the president and at the pleasure of the president. I'm glad that this has changed, that now that there's been more certification of elections, you know, of different states, now that they've issued that letter saying, you know, we're ready. It's unfortunate that it took this long, but it's not the first time. My understanding is that there's also another situation in 2000 when, you know, people were not accepting the results, but I'm glad we're moving forward, excited for that.
Glenn, there was this 16-day delay is a fantasy. Emily Murphy did her job. The media does not declare the president the president. The actual election will take place on December 14th when the Electoral College meets. But Emily Murphy went all the way back to 1963, and her hands were tied because, I mean, she opened this up the same day that Nevada finally finished counting their votes. And so we didn't have a president-elect on election night. Mm-hmm. The media, the federal law doesn't say you start the transition team once ABC declares a winner. And the fact of the matter is they're still canvassing and certifications.
But Senator, we also don't leave that to one candidate who doesn't want to accept the fact of how things are looking as well.
But Emily Murphy should not be criticized for following the law. There was no precedent and no federal statutes that said that she could start the transition before a president conceded or before the election had been certified. And so she did her job. She should be complimented, not criticized.
Do you think the president was the one pulling the strings there, though?
Well, the president, had he conceded the race earlier, then the precedent said that she would start the transition. But without him conceding, she had no authority to start the transition funding and arrangements. And so I'm glad that Trump finally did. I think he waited too long. But if you want to criticize someone, don't criticize Emily Murphy.
What about, you both bring up the point, it's not the first time this has happened. That's definitely a fair point there. But the Biden, or President-elect Biden and his administration wanting to move forward, saying that that delay was costly. Your thoughts, Senator Escamilla?
I think every transition needs its time, and you know, I think it's going to cost. Again, she works at the pleasure of the president, so she was pleasing the president, and whether, you know, was her activity illegal out of the guidelines, I agree actually with the senator that that's not the case. There's it's not very clear, the language, so maybe this is a good opportunity to bring more clarity to that role of that position during this process. But I think she's just was working at the pleasure of the president. The president was upset and you know, in a way having a tantrum. So this is kind of like the aftermath.
I don't think there's a harm here, Glenn. Joe Biden has been in the swamp for 47 years. Every single person he's appointing to his cabinet is part of the swamp. These people have been in D.C. most of their adult lives. I think the transition will be fine.
Okay, we have about a minute left. I want to hit one other thing real quick, and that is the Dow hitting 30,000 during the week. Historic moment there. The president, we heard him warn in the campaign that if Biden were elected, the market would crash. What do we make of that, seeing how the market has responded since? Senator Weiler, let's start with you.
The Dow's responding to the coronavirus vaccines. I don't think they're responding to the presidential election, but I'm glad. I mean, I've got my retirement account in the market, so I'm glad to see it go up. It went up historic amounts under Trump, and I hope it goes up. And you know, Joe Biden's a known quantity. I think if Bernie Sanders had been elected or Elizabeth Warren, we'd be seeing a different market reaction.
All right, Senator Escamilla,
yeah, just
you have the
happy
final
to
30
see.
seconds.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it has to do with Biden being elected. The world has reacted great to his election, so it's good. It's good for the economy. Different factors affect, of course, how the Dow responds, but I'm glad that the presidential election this time is bringing really good news, and worldwide we're getting good response for that election.
All right, great conversation. Appreciate having the insight of both of you. Thanks for being with us this morning.
Thanks, Glenn.
Stay with